In late 2012, I was a young boy, and I had some birthday money, around $400, and I wanted the Halo 4 Xbox 360. But Best Buy didn't have it in stock, so I was like, okay, well then a laptop, because I want to play Minecraft. I think it was a Toshiba Satellite. It had a 3rd gen i3 with 4 gigs of RAM and a 500 gig hard drive. And for Minecraft, back then it was just enough. But I wanted more. It was also running Windows 8, which was new at the time, and my first real OS. I thought it was fine. It's a year later and I want a better computer. At this time, I know nothing about computers. The most I knew was getting to %app data % for Minecraft modding. I would play Minecraft with my best friend at the time, Jacob. Back then, I wanted to make Minecraft videos, and my 4 gigs with an Ivy Bridge i3 wasn't going to cut it. And I had heard of the Titan Z, the $3,000 best video card ever, TM. I still knew nothing about computers, but I knew I wanted a custom one. Not an Alienware or a... well, I hadn't heard of other brands yet, but I knew I wanted a custom one, where someone builds it and it's better and stuff. So in late 2013, my dad surprised me with a custom-built PC made by his friend. I was told it was around $400. It was in this very Antec 900 case, the only and oldest thing I've kept from back then, and it now houses my 2008 PC. I don't have any other of the original hardware. I knew I wanted an i5, and I was a little confused when my dad said it was a different brand, but an i5 equivalent. It was a Phenom 2 X4 945, a 3 GHz quad core, not bad at the time. I think the motherboard was this, and unfortunately I don't think we'll ever see a motherboard this ugly again. Cooling it was the behemoth Cooler Master Z600. This thing was chunky, and I'm not sure I needed that much heatsink. I had 4 sticks of 2 gigs DDR3 memory, and it was 2 mismatched sets of G-Skill. My graphics card was an XFX HD 7850 1 gig. It was entry level back then, but honestly respectable. The storage consisted of 2 750GB Western Digital Caviar Black hard drives. Pretty over the top, and they were partitioned in a way that wasn't explained to me and didn't make too much sense to me. I can understand now, but I still think it's silly. So my C drive was 100 gigs. I had a D drive that was 200 gigs, and I think that was meant to be the game partition, and then a 1TB E drive for backup. I didn't yet know how to change things to point to different drives or partitions, and my 100 gig C drive filled up quick. I get now that by partitioning hard drives you can dedicate more of the important things to be faster to access on the platter, but again, nothing was explained to me, and I had complained about how my drive is full. Like, come on man, 1500 gigs and you couldn't put 500 gigs in each or tell me how to work with it? But that wasn't the only thing wrong with my first custom computer. For some reason, the graphics driver would fail every time I turned my computer on, and I had to physically reseat my DVI cable and constantly reinstall the drivers. To this day, I don't know what the problem was. It could be boiled down to old AMD drivers being the issue. But the guy who built it suggested that with all these problems, I should have just gotten a Dell. Like, okay, asshat, why are you giving a kid a computer that has a bunch of quirks? Also the power supply, I don't know what the original one was, but it was silver, unpainted, that crapped out pretty early and was replaced by a Corsair CX600M. I actually got a fair bit of mileage out of the system. I picked up Skyrim Anthology, and after putting in the disc, it just had me install Steam for the first time. I did a couple upgrades. I knew 8GB was too little and for plebs, so I picked up a 16 gig kit of Green Patriot Viper memory, which can also be seen in many of my earlier videos. I had removed one set of 4 gigs, and with 2 sticks of 8 and 2 sticks of 2, I had 20 gigs of memory. Hell yeah. I also bought a 2TB hard drive for some reason. I still have it today, and it's still going strong, the second longest thing I've owned. But another year passes, and by mid-2014 I want an upgrade, a full one. I drew a small picture of a couple different computers and the specs below. I didn't know anything about computer specs yet, to the point to where I kitted the best one out with an i9. It's funny because back then, I didn't know it, but they didn't exist. And it didn't work like that. You know, you have the i3, the i5, and the i7, good, better, best. I called the first model the Yogurt 1. Not inspired by anything else, completely original. Anyway, after more birthday money and after working a summer job, I had enough for a $1,000 computer by late 2014. I lived near Fry's Electronics, which is now unalive unfortunately, but back then it was the coolest place, for years my favorite place to go. So I got to see computer cases out on display, motherboards on display that you could touch, and in the back of the store they had graphics cards and boxes. You couldn't touch those, only the boxes. I got the Nwin GR1, a huge case that I wish I still had. This was so cool. I ended up getting an i5 4670K, probably overkill for me at the time, as I didn't know how to overclock or really what that was. I also got a definitely overkill motherboard, the MSI Z87 Empower. It was only $200 at the time. That's the price of a mid-range motherboard these days, and higher-end motherboards are like twice that. And to cool my unlocked i5, I got the Intermax ETS T40W. I also still have this today. It's a nice tower cooler and it was only like $30. As for the GPU, my dad got me the Asus R9 280 3GB, and it was plenty for me at the time, a respectable mid-range card. I don't have many pictures of this computer, but building it with my dad sparked something in me. I was genuinely depressed, but computers gave me a reason. By the end of that year, I had also built one for my little sister, who was too young to even know how to use it, featuring most of the hardware from my old computer. In her system, I also put my Corsair CX600M, and I upgraded my power supply to a CX750, a unit that this day lives in my best mate Jalen's computer. I then built my older brother a computer reusing my old case, which again, I now have. Now, me and both my siblings had computers, but the only thing in my mind was I want to do another one. That Christmas, my dad got me all the parts I need to build a second mini PC. It was only about $200, with an Athlon 5150 and a mini ITX board. I put it together, and while I definitely didn't use it much compared to my main powerhouse, it was a cute little extra computer that I had, and still have the case to this. I knew I wanted to do something with this computer. I wanted to show it off, and I had named it the Yogurt Mini. I had always wanted to make YouTube videos. When I was really young, way before this, I had an old camcorder that would make vlogs along with my childhood friend Devin when I was like 8 years old. That footage is completely lost and probably written over or bit rotted. Back to the present, but still the past. It's early 2015 and I want to make YouTube videos again. For real this time. And on February 14th, 2015, Valentine's Day, I made YogertPC. Obviously wasn't busy that day. So that means YogertPC is 10 years old. Which is crazy. It's something I started when I was a kid, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to play with computer hardware, and I wanted to share it with all of you. I didn't know it when I built my first computer with my dad, or when I got my first custom-built computer, or when I decided to get a crap top when the Halo 4 Xbox 360 wasn't in stock, but I had found something that I would love for the rest of my life.
I play roulette and blow brands out soon. Duh.
But we're not done yet. YogertPC was just born and I still have the same computer from back then. I make a video about the Yogurt Mini for my first video, but it's not up anymore because the person in it later didn't want to be in any videos, and I will respect that. But I do remember recording this video 2 or 3 times and rewriting it. Anyway, it's upgrade time. I added a Crucial MX200 256GB SSD. I do still have this, and it was my first taste of solid state. And from here, until just a couple years ago, my storage consisted of this SSD and a 2TB hard drive. In the middle of 2015, I switched to the NZXT S340 for my case. A much more compact case than the Nwin GR1. I do think the S340 is one of my favorite cases ever. Then, tragedy struck. I had this little habit of leaving my side panel off. Not a biggie, I still do this today for easy access. But the real toxic trait was feeling the back of my GPU to get a sense of what the temps felt like. This is somewhat of a handy trick to be able to tell if something is idle or around 40 degrees C, or under heavy load around 80 degrees C, or somewhere in between. I touched the back of my GPU, the exposed PCB, while wearing socks, while potentially sweaty fingers, and it shut off. I my R9 280. Big sad. I bought a GTX 970 for $400 shortly after, and was having to use a GT 730 for a couple weeks. I painted it white, and later blue. This card was eventually in my brother's computer for a few years, but I have it back once again. My baby. Too bad it's pretty useless these days. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. My computer went fairly unchanged for a while. Around late 2015 or early 2016, I added a Corsair H105 liquid cooler, and it served me for many years. I eventually sold it to a friend. I also started not using a case entirely. It was easier for me at the time to use an open air test bench, so I retired the S340 and had my motherboard sitting out on a piece of foam. It's now early 2017, Hints of new AMD processors that won't be FX are coming out, and I need to get on the hype train, so I sold my CPU and motherboard of many years and dealt with a first gen i7 on an OEM board for a little while until I can get back up and running again on new hardware. Mid 2017, Ryzen just made AMD again, and it was all the rage. So I upgraded and downgraded, depending on how you look at it, to a Ryzen 5 1600, 16 gigs of probably too slow DDR4, an MSI B350 Pro, and a blue and black NZXT S340 Elite. I was going to make a video on this, but for whatever reason I didn't, but I did take some cool pics, and it can be seen in some of my listings videos. I soon added one of the NZXT Kraken liquid coolers with a cool infinity mirror effect, but this was also the time I started slowing down on making YouTube videos. My brother is moving out of state soon, and I wanted to make sure he had a computer that would last him for a few more years, so I sold my blue PC, so sad, and got him a Coffee Lake i5 with my GTX 970. In return, I took his old system, an i5 4690 and a GTX 770. This was entry level back then, while being many years old. I made do. I even upgraded to an i7 4790K, a processor I would use for a few years after this, and I also upgraded my GPU to an RX 590 when that came out. I got the red NZXT H100 ITX case, and shortly after swapped into a Silverstone RVZ03 with a Noctua NH-L9X65 tiny CPU cooler, a 2.5-inch 2TB hard drive, and an EVGA 550-watt gold SFX power supply. And I had me a tiny system that lasted me for a few years. It's 2022. We're entering the modern era. I started making videos again. What took me so long? I don't know. I'm depressed. What do you want from me? I bought some used hardware, as it's the best value way to go, a Ryzen 5 3600 and 16 gigs of 3600 MHz DDR4 with some ASUS motherboard. And in this cute, all-gray, no-window MATX case. I rocked this for about a year, switched into this little pink case. I think it's Vetru is the brand. I like pink. Don't bully me. The cooler also became this Arctic 33 Esports Edition that they sent me back in the day, but I didn't have a chance to really test it until now, so I'll go ahead and say, this cooler good, buy Arctic Cooler. I also genuinely have been using their thermal paste since then. Good stuff. Arctic, please send more. And in 2023, I bought an OEM, at the time you couldn't get these normally, a Ryzen 7 5700. It's like a 5700G without the G, so not quite as good as the other 5000 series Ryzen processors, and I still use this chip today. I don't see a reason to upgrade to an X3D CPU, for the money at least, so I'll wait until I can get into AM5 for cheap. The GPU became a used MSI RX 5700 XT, much faster than an RX 590, but still kinda lacking these days. I moved into this nice MSI case, then shortly after into this DIY PC case, and also an ASUS B550F motherboard. You probably don't remember, not a lot of people watched these videos, but I got this case and motherboard used for like 50 bucks because the motherboard didn't seem to work. I even tried with the Ryzen 5 3600, even tried the BIOS flashback feature, so I thought it was dead. But when the 5700 wouldn't work in the motherboard I was using, I decided to try again and bam, it works perfectly. So this is my current PC, and maybe for the next many months. Currently, I'm testing my Discord admin Chris's ARC A770, and it's a great video card. I'll get around to making a video about that soon, and then it's back to the 5700 XT. My computer's been through so many changes since I originally built it in 2014. Replaced all of the parts to where it's a different ship now, or however that analogy goes. I went from a quad-core Phenom and a 1GB GPU playing Skyrim and Minecraft to an 8-core, 16-thread Ryzen processor with an 8GB GPU addicted to Counter-Strike, all in 10 years. I can't wait to see where the next 10 years takes us. Thank you for coming along this journey with me, whether you were around in the before 4 times, stuck around through the dark ages, or you're a new viewer, confused why there's 2 different hosts. Thank you. And thank you to that other host, Ando. We're going to do great things in the coming years, so do stick around for more.